On a fateful day, December 16th, 1773, the Boston Gazette releases a story that will spark up the greatest rebellion in the history of America, the Boston Tea Party. England's responsibility was to repeal all taxes completely, and this was the case on all goods, except for one, tea. It all started when England got their hands on America. At the time, it seemed only natural to profit from their own land, but it was their biggest mistake yet that caused such an uprising. Even upon the repeal of all but one tax, England's decision was to give the monopoly over that tax to the British East India Company. It was May 10th, 1773, when the harsh taxation was instated upon the colonies of America. The Bostonian people could do nothing but watch helplessly. But there was one organization, however, willing to fight for the people's rights. They were the Sons of Liberty. There were many instigators that led up to the Boston Tea Party. The main two were the Stamp Act of 1765 and the Townshend Act of 1767. These acts angered the colonists not only because of the heavy taxes they enforced, but also due to the lack of representation of the colonies in the distant British Parliament. This meant that the colonists were neither Englishmen nor citizens of any other independent country. It was one of the many rights that the British failed to grant the colonists with. The British government then passed the Tea Act, which allowed the East India Company to sell and tax their tea at the Boston ports. This caused the Sons of Liberty, a group of around 100 men at the time, to head towards the Boston harbor dressed as Mohawk Indians. There they boarded the 3 ships with taxable tea on board, the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, the Beaver, and dumped 342 chests and around $2 million worth of tea into the Boston harbor. The Sons of Liberty, a group of patriots led by Samuel Adams, were dedicated to independence. They started meeting secretly in 1765 and decided to call themselves the Sons of Liberty because they believed in a free America. They did whatever they could to help the colonies unite and become one independent country. This group started when the British Parliament enforced taxes on all printed matter that was sold in the colonies. This was known as the Stamp Act, and it angered the colonists, which led to increased smuggling and illegal transport of certain goods. The colonists formed the Stamp Act Congress to discuss the matter. 9 colonies sent 27 representatives to the Stamp Act Congress to protest against the despised act. The representatives of both the colonies and the British Parliament attended the Stamp Act Congress. As a result, the Stamp Act was repealed a month later.
But how did this whole situation commence in the first place? Well, since about 1760, the British had been taxing goods from sugar to paper, causing the colonists to protest upon every new tax. When taxes were finally repealed, only one remained, the famed tea tax. Although British tea was cheaper than other teas, it was harshly taxed. Despite the constant protest, the British refused to turn their ships back at the harbor, and this soon called to the attention of the Sons of Liberty. Samuel Adams led the group of rebels in disguise and made their only target the tea. There was little to no damage done to the actual ships, pointing out that the colonists could fight for their rights but remain civil. It is important to recognize, however, that the Sons of Liberty played the hands-on role. On the sides, news distributors like the Boston Gazette kept the peoples up to date on what was going on during this time, releasing various news articles often containing notable amounts of propaganda against England. The Boston Gazette also published and supported articles written by people like Samuel Adams himself. However, while publicity is important, inspiration is also a key element. Samuel Adams has referenced the works and sayings of John Locke multiple times, most famously Locke's quote, "Where law ends, tyranny begins." The British Parliament sought to stop this from getting anywhere further. They understood that if they kept up, the colonists would take it to another level and start a revolution. They saw it as a responsibility to stop the colonists from speaking out of place and refusing to pay taxes. Just as the British Parliament had their responsibilities, Samuel Adams and his Sons of Liberty had their own. They knew that if they were ever going to get rid of these taxes without representation and free the colonists, it would be now, and they knew they had to take advantage. This will all come with time. When speaking about such subjects, it is important for one to recognize a time after the Tea Party, but before the American Revolution. It was a time in which the colonists had little to no right in their land. It was a time better known as the time of the Intolerable Acts. The Intolerable Acts included laws, called acts, such as the Boston Port Act, which was passed in response to the Tea Party in order to punish not only the rebels, but all of Boston by closing the port until all the money that the spilled tea was worth was paid. And the Administration of Justice Act, which allowed the British government to move loyalist trials to different countries, even Britain itself possibly, if they wanted to. This was passed despite the fact that the British had a fair trial after the Boston Massacre. These acts suppressed the colonies and took their right to speech away almost completely. This was the last straw. After the Intolerable Acts came the biggest leap in American history, the American Revolution.